Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. It's my favorite day of the week. Going to do our show this morning and then wrap up the week and go into the weekend. And I don't know about you, but I don't live to work. I work to live. And my guest today is a fantastic example of teaching others how to do exactly that. We're meeting today with Brian Barber. He's the president of an extraordinary veterans organization called Mission Fish. We're going to get into what FISH stands for. It's an acronym that I just, when I first heard it, I just thought that is amazing. So, Brian, thanks for being on Finding Certainty today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Not a problem, sir. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
100%. And we come across organizations like your own that are doing, such great work and such good in our communities, in the nation. Absolutely want to try to get your message out and recognize you for the efforts you're making and try to help if we can. So, quick background, Mission Fish is an organization that helps veterans to learn the value of fishing. That anyone who's a fisherman who grew up fishing with their grandparents or takes their kids fishing or whatever, just knows the innate value and benefits of getting away, just checking out, unwinding a little bit with a fishing rod in your hands. And I've been a fisherman all my life. I'm actually wearing my real life shirt in your honor, or my real tree shirt. Sorry, Brian, in your honor. If you're watching on your YouTube video, you can see it.
Yeah.
Brian is wearing his Mission Fish shirt. And, we'll get into this a little bit of what they're doing and how they're doing, but how they're doing it. But it's an organization that's teaching veterans that there's a reason to live. There's a reason to stay engaged, to be involved, to develop hobbies and interests. And, we'll talk about this later in the show, but the veteran suicide rate today is absolutely unacceptable. And Brian and organizations just like him are fighting to combat that and doing an amazing job. So again, Brian, thanks for being here. We always start out our show by, I like to share a couple of reasons why I've invited this specific guest. And first and foremost, I wanted to do a really special show today. Today's my daughter Brighton's birthday. And I had my first show for Finding Certainty on my son's birthday, Anderson, on August 12th, almost 2 years ago now. And today is my daughter's birthday, April 10th. So I wanted to do a really special show, and I thought this would be a good one. Secondly, as I said, I love fishing. I've grown up fishing, taken my kids fishing, and it's one of my favorite pastimes. I was just in a mastermind yesterday where they were talking about, where's our happy place? And the very first thing that popped in my mind was all alone on a river, fly fishing, right? Yeah. And so, wanted to do a special show today. I have a deep love of fishing. I'm also a veteran myself, served several years in the Army. And so what Brian is doing is really dear to my heart and really valuable. And so, Brian, let's start out by getting to know you a little bit. I always try to kind of tell your backstory. Maybe tell us where you're from and a little bit about your growing up years, where you served, which branch you served in, and so forth. And then we'll get into how Mission Fish came to be.
Got it. Awesome, sir. Well, my name is Brian Barber. I was born and raised in Oxnard, California. Joined the Marine Corps in 1992. Actually, no, I graduated high school in 1992. Tried to do the civilian life, working at Crown Dodge, changing oil, trying to just make time and trying to do what was needed as someone that just graduated high school. I had a son. I got married, and changing oil wasn't paying the bills. It wasn't doing it for me. One day, while we're having dinner, one of my best friends from high school comes over and he goes, "Hey man, I'm joining the Marine Corps." And I thought, joining the Marine Corps? I'm like, oh, hell no, not me. You hear stories from I heard stories from my grandfathers and other uncles and people that have joined the service. And when you hear he said he's joined the Marine Corps, I was like, not me. There's no way I'm having some person in my face yelling at me, digging deep. And I was like, not happening. Even though I know my mom was strict and my dad was strict and my grandparents were strict as well. So it wasn't nothing that I couldn't take. It was just the fact that I was done with it from them. I was like, I don't have to do that no more. And then as dinner ended, I thought, this is my best friend. There's a reason why he came over here. There's a reason why he came to talk to me and have this conversation. And before he left, I told him, I said, hey, man, you know what? I'm going to go with you. I'm going to join with you. Um, that next day, I went to the recruiting station and signed up. And I'm going to say maybe 3 weeks later, we were in boot camp together.
So you made a decision that quickly in one
Yes,
night.
sir. Yes, sir.
That's incredible. I remember when I was recruited into the Army by a, Army recruiter, and I had never really considered going into the military either. My dad had been in the Army, but I just didn't really think it was my thing. It wasn't my style. I'm pretty laid back and
Hmm.
easygoing. But
Correct.
it was the same for me. It was like, I mean, I literally made the decision, and I also joined with my best friend, and we went to boot camp about a couple weeks apart, but we got to write letters back and forth and kind of experience it. We were at
Yeah.
different posts, um, but yeah, that's interesting because I remember
Yeah.
just making that decision. It was almost like an epiphany in in a matter of minutes, and I was only 17. I had to have my parents sign for me to go in because I went what they call split option, where I went to boot camp this summer between my junior and senior
Sure.
year. So anyway, that's cool. Where'd you
Yeah.
go for boot camp?
So, boot camp, we were in San Diego.
Yeah,
Graduated boot
Pendleton.
camp. Yeah, graduated boot camp in MCRD San Diego down there. After that, my first went to comp school in 29 Palms for about 3 months. Um, Brutal out there. The heat was, oof, but at the same time, I was able to go home every weekend and see my family. So after comp school, my first unit was with 1st Battalion, 11th Marines in Camp Pendleton, Artillery Battery in Las Pulgas there. Did that for 3.5 years. After that, PCS to Miramar 373 in Miramar. So got to join, got to take a ride, a cruise around that historical base because I mean, everybody wanted to go to Miramar. I mean, especially after Top Gun, it was like the place to be.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like everybody's like, "I mean, I'm stationed at Miramar." I was like, "Yeah, me too." Then after
It's like
that,
a
I
it's
did
like a
like,
badge of honor, isn't it, Brian, to have
yeah,
served
it's like
at
one of those things where he's like, "Well,
Miramar?
I heard at Camp Hill." Like, yeah, but I was at Miramar. Like, oh wow, okay. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
Yeah, did you see Tom Cruise? No, he wasn't around there when I was. And then after that, I was stationed at a reserve unit, 4th Lad Low Altitude Defense Battalion in Pasadena, and that's when between those years of enlistment, I had 3 back surgeries. Made numerous deployments and made numerous promotions and awards, but the 3 back surgeries what really kind of dampened the whole experience of the Marine Corps for me. As you know, in 2003, the war started, and
Mhm.
me coming off of my 3rd back surgery, I wasn't able to attend and fight with my brothers and sisters, so I had to sit back and kind of watch them go, and it was disheartening because you train so long and so hard and you do so many hours of execution to where when it comes down to it and they're telling you, unfortunately, we need you back here. And it's like that's not no one wants to. I know I didn't want to hear that as a Marine. That's the last thing you want to hear is you're not able to go because of this. And I was like, mm-mm, there's no way. There's no way this is happening. But I had to accept that. And I had to understand that my role at that time um, was to be a part of the CACO team, which is the Casualty Assistance Calls Officers team, and we were the ones that would notify the families upon the individual either missing in action, killed in action, injured in action, we would be the ones notifying the family.
Wow, that's a tough job.
Yeah.
Important, but tough.
Yeah, it was
No.
yeah, it was brutal for me, brutal. Because it's like I said, you train so hard all these years for that opportunity, and and you just have to sit back and watch it pass, and you're like, that's not what I did this for.
Yeah. Well, and then you're also on the other end where you're having to take that news to these family members that is devastating, right? The
Right.
ultimate price.
Right.
It's funny how much our stories parallel each other, Brian, because I ended up staying in for 9 years and got out because I had back injury and also my knees were giving out. I worked in physical therapy for the first 5 or 4 years with the military
Mhm.
and lifting all these patients in and out of beds, in and out of beds. It just really messed up my knees. I played basketball for the Army as well, which didn't help. But
Nice.
the I'm 6'4". You can't tell on the YouTube screen, but
Oh man, jealous, super jealous.
yeah, the so yeah, so it's interesting because the military is a hard life, right? It is hard from day one. I mean, you get on that bus and you're getting screamed at by a drill sergeant. You just got there. You're like, dude, you don't even know me. You're screaming at me, but they are breaking
Yeah,
you down
yeah,
and they're really it's an interesting experience. If you've never been through it, it is a combination of earning respect, creating a little bit of fear, a little bit of trepidation, creating a an understanding of the chain of command, right? Because when you're in a battle, you're on the war on the battleground. You don't have time to question orders. You have to learn to respond and
correct.
respect that authority immediately, right? And so,
Yeah.
but it's hard. It's hard. You're talking about being able to go home and see your family on the weekends. I mean, a lot of military, they're gone for months away from
Oh yeah,
family
I've
and
done
so
that.
forth
I've
and
worked
so
with
on.
get
You
it.
know, and then you add to that the just obviously the
The unknown factor too.
privation, right? Missing out on family, missing out on, and then seeing your friends injured and seeing them who lose their lives with the ultimate sacrifice. I've got a good friend who's a two-time Purple Heart recipient, Glenn Copeland, right? He's the one who introduced us actually, and he saw his whole platoon who hit a mine. They were all blown out of their truck. Some of them passed away. He got injured. I don't know if you haven't been through it, if you can truly appreciate what our military goes through for us. I mean, as you've observed, both in the military and since serving veterans, do you think that the American citizens in general, American populace, do you think they even come close to comprehending it?
No.
Not at all, right?
Like to me, there's so many layers to it, and I think America sees two or three of the layers compared to what we see when we're down to the core of it.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
we
we hear
work, it's
that.
almost like working backwards for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we hear that common phrase, and I think people mean it, right? But it's almost rote. It's kind of just a gut response, right? Thank you for your service. It's actually the title I gave to this episode. And what does that mean? When somebody says thank you for your service, do they really mean it? Do they understand what they're saying? Do they understand what that means to the service person, to the serviceman or woman?
Mhm.
I don't think they do, personally.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
they're
it's just
trying to
an
be they're trying to be respectful, trying to be appreciative, but it's very superficial. I think it's very kind of cursory.
right.
Would you agree?
It's funny. It's funny when you hear it from a fellow veteran, though. It hits different.
You're
It,
absolutely right. I
it hits
totally agree. There's that look in the eye, right? A little bit of
that
a
handshake
sort
hits
of,
a first, and like I know you mean. I mean, I know when civilians say it, I know they mean it.
uh-huh.
And like I said earlier, it's that layer factor. I mean, it's just how deep of it do you really mean? But when it's me and you, and I shake your hand and I tell you, hey, thanks for your service, it's coming from You know what I mean? You know it's coming from deep within. Like, hey, we
I
could not be here to do this, so I appreciate you.
100%. We're actually already up against our first break, Brian, but we're visiting with Brian Barber, and I want to get in after the break, get into a little bit about how you started Mission Fish, what you guys do. I think it's a just an incredible service.
Thank you.
It's interesting talking with you a little bit about our mutual experience. And
Yeah.
you were Corps, I was Army, but it's all important. And so we'll be right back. Don't go away. You're on Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. We'll be right back.
All clear, back into.
Man, that snuck up on me, Jordan. I didn't even see the 30-second warning until too late, but
It's all right, no problem. Definitely following right behind you.
that's all right. We're making up lost time. So now you live in Oxnard now, Brian? Is that
No,
right?
I'm in Victorville. I'm in Victorville now.
Victorville. That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
I can go into that one over the podcast, but my mother moved out here to Victorville. So probably about 5-6 years ago. With my stepdad, he bought her the house of her dreams, and they were living out here. Well, unfortunately, on his he was on his way. His duty was done. He served his purpose as far as his military service, and he done what he done here. Um, but he was on his way out, and he wanted to give me the house because he knew how responsible I was. And I'm like, there's no way you're just gonna give me this house. That's not how I operate. I mean, there's no way I'm just taking this house. And so I said, and my mom was out here, and I didn't want her to be alone. My brother was out here living with her, but when you have a little bit more family than just the one, it makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So this was in 2021, right after COVID popped, and we're like, nothing was moving, everything was kind of stagnant. All my kids were online learning at the time, so I talked to the wife and I go, "What do we do?" And she goes, "If not now, when? I mean, when do you want to do this? Do you want to wait for him to pass and then do this, or?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to do that." She goes, "Well, then now's the time. Let's make that jump now."
Sorry, interrupt. Coming back in 15 seconds.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. So you moved back. So you moved out there.
Yes, I moved out here to help her out, and
all right. We're gonna start back up, Brian. So
yeah.
Hold that thought.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. My favorite part of our intro to our radio show is where it says U.S. Army veteran. It's the part I'm most proud of the entire introduction. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life. I know you feel the same way, Brian. And there are millions of Americans out there who I think do appreciate the service that our military has given, and there are many who don't really understand it. I think they're grateful for their freedoms, but they don't understand the ultimate price and sacrifices that have been given to provide those freedoms. There are others who just don't care, right? And others who just don't even think about it, right? But in our role, both here on Finding Certainty and Voice America, and then through my company, Certainty Management, we've been able to work with quite a few veterans organizations. And it's one of my favorite areas to spend time and put resources into, because people like yourself, Brian, I mean, you get it, right? You understand, you value it. You're trying to make an effort. Got a very good friend named Coach McFarland. He was a track coach for 50 years out in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And Coach Jackie Joyner Kersey, actually, gold medalist. And now he owns a veterans organization called Honor to Our Heroes, where he's combating veteran homelessness. And you guys are like two peas of a pod. I mean, he's about twice your age, but he's just such a passionate advocate for veterans. He reminds me a lot of you, maybe a few years down the road, but
yeah,
So you came back from the military. What? How long you been out, by the way? When did you get out of the Marine Corps?
It's funny because yesterday, well, April 10th, was, I want to say, I think it was my 29th year that I had gone to boot camp.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was like, holy crap, 29 years ago I went to boot camp. And the reason I know that is because the day before that was my original EAS, was April 9th, and April 9th is my daughter's birthday. So April 10th was the day
Really?
yeah, so April 10th was the day I went to boot camp. So it's kind of ironic. I was like, holy crap. And I was thinking when I went, I was like, man, it's been 29 years since I stepped on those yellow footprints.
Isn't that amazing?
And I remember it like it was yesterday. Oh, like it
I
was
do
yesterday.
too. Yeah.
Oh, man.
My my memories of a lot of things in my life are kind of fading, right? They're dim, but those memories of boot
Yeah.
camp are
Yeah,
crystal clear.
they're just like, bang. You're like, you
Right.
can't,
Maybe
you
because they were
know,
so jarring, right?
they made a definite impact on me. And it's one of those things that when that impact was made, I think, like I said, the impact was made when my buddy told me that night, and I grasped it that night, and I was looking so forward to it because I'm now, I was going through it with one of my best friends that would not let me down, and he
Right.
knows that I wouldn't let him down. So I was looking forward to me and him becoming one of the few in the crowd. You know what I mean? I was like, we're doing this, man. We're doing this. So, but I remember the whole day from the recruiter picking us up that night, taking us to the hotel, being in the hotel, thinking, okay, this is it, and then not sleeping that night because it was just my anxiety was high and nerves and
Right.
everything. And then that morning, we're getting up early, we're hopping on the bus, and we're going to Cyprus for one last check, and then we on to the Denny's right there off of the five. I think it's the 5 freeway. They popped
Yep.
us in the Denny's for our last meal, and it was steak and shrimp, and we're like, this feel like we're going into getting our last meal and getting our blessing before we go onto the bridge at MCRD and finally hit that bridge under MCRD, and then doors opened up, and
And the rest of
yeah,
your life started.
all hell broke loose in a positive way.
Yeah. And I think it's such a vivid memory because it was so impactful for one thing. I mean, it changes the whole trajectory of your life, right?
Yeah, the
It
whole dynamic gets
changes,
twisted.
it does. I mean, it changes who you are as a person
Correct,
fundamentally forever. And I
correct.
think it's the part where I say I don't think a lot of people really understand that. They may be grateful for the service, they may be grateful for their freedoms, but they don't understand what veterans have gone through from boot camp to service to all the sacrifices, et cetera. They don't really understand that. So now, how long ago did you decide to start Mission Fish?
Um, I got out in 2004. Um, upon getting out, I was, I would say I was lost. The reason I was lost is, as we discussed a couple minutes ago, in boot camp, it's 3 months long, and they twist your whole dynamic. Like we said, they take you from being Brian Barber to recruit Barber. There's no first name. You're recruit Barber now.
Yeah.
And then, but when you get out, for me, they didn't really teach me how to go from Sergeant Barber back to Brian Barber. That mental disconnect was there, and I didn't know how to adjust to that. It was hard for me. Um, I was like, okay, you break me down in 3 months, build me up in 3 months. You know what I mean? Build me back to my civilian self, and it was difficult for me. Um, so I decided to went to college, hung around a little bit, tried to do some odd jobs. Um, Lost my brother, and then I lost my grandmother,
Sorry.
and then once I lost them, it was devastating to me because then I was like, these are two of my VIPs, you know what I mean? And I lost them both within a year of each other, and I was like, this is taking its toll on me. Um, so I thought, how can I do something that will get my mind off it? My buddy Jason goes, "Hey man, let's go fishing," and instantly I was kind of like, why didn't I think of that? Because many years ago, that's where all this cultivated from was my grandfather, which was a Navy veteran. But we went fishing every Thursday during the summer, and the stories that
Nice.
me and him had every Thursday was like it was it was religious. You know what I mean? We went Thursday morning, we ate the fish Friday, relaxed all week, repeat next week. And I remember the stories on the boat. I remember him looking on the way out of the harbor, pointing at the Navy vessels, like, "Oh, that's a this ship, and that's a this ship." And I, I cooked on a boat that was like that, and so on and so forth. And I thought, man, I want to outrank you one day, Granddaddy. I want to come back and say, look, I got you. Um, so my buddy Jason goes, let's go fishing, man. So he got on the boat, and I remember being on the boat, and um, I felt grounded. I felt secure. I felt, even though it was me and Jason, I didn't know anybody else on the boat. I felt okay. I felt
Yeah,
comfortable.
welcomed, right? You felt
Yeah,
accepted.
yeah. And it wasn't like there was no one pointing at me. There was no one thanking me for my service. Not that that was a thing, but we didn't. No one knew who I was on the boat. Nobody knew me but Jason. And once I got back, and I thought, how can I make this impactful for another veteran that's going through what I went through, what I'm going through?
You
And
know, you make a good point, Brian, because I talk about my happy place, right? Being on a river with a fly rod. I'm more of a river fisherman than deep sea, but
I tried to fly fishing, man. I don't have the rhythm for it.
you have to be kind of anal retentive, I think, a little bit of perfectionistic, but
Yeah. Yes.
you know, it's I don't care if you're on a fishing boat with, 15 strangers. If you're all alone on a river, there is something about fishing that you hit the nail on the head. You said you felt like you were grounded, right? You felt like you got away from the chaos and the complexity and the challenges of life. It's like going to church, it's like going to the temple where you shut the doors and shut out the noise for a little while. And it's
Yes.
hard to describe it. Again, I find some parallels between the military and fishing because unless you're a fisherman, unless you've experienced that, you really don't understand it, right?
Right.
You just think it's a bunch of smelly fishing and seasickness
Right.
or something,
Yeah.
right? Right. Yeah.
Right.
And
100%.
and so that's really cool. So you went fishing with your friend, you had this
Yeah.
epiphany. I think of it as a paradigm shift, right? And I'll tell you a quick story I heard just this week because I think it illustrates this point. My friend was saying not too long ago, he was driving down I-5 here in Las Vegas, and suddenly there were these highway patrolmen who were weaving back and forth in front of traffic and brought all the traffic to a stop, like six lanes of traffic, right? And he's going, what's going on? And he was struggling because he was a little frustrated because he was late for a flight.
Of course.
And his temperature starts going up. It's 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. And he's like, what's going on? Right. And then he saw all these emergency vehicles in
Uh-huh.
a line coming down the right lane and crossing over Spring Valley into, I think it's right near it's near the Strip in Las Vegas. And he realized it was the procession for the two highway patrolmen who were recently killed. There were two
Mm.
young patrolmen who had stopped to help a motorist, and a drunk driver had hit them, killed them both instantly. And they had young families and everything. And it was this procession, was their funeral procession, right? And all the law enforcement first responders had come out. Well, when he realized what it was, he said he immediately felt completely differently
Yeah.
about
Kind of felt
what was
guilty, like,
going on, right? Almost guilty, right? For feeling frustrated. But he said, I didn't care if I missed my flight. He goes, I immediately understood what was happening and had a total paradigm shift in how he viewed it. Well, paradigm shifts are interesting because they don't just change how you feel, they change how you see something, right? How you understand it, how you appreciate it. It changes
right.
everything, right? So I think it was interesting that you were kind of struggling, trying to find yourself, working odd jobs and lost a couple of family members yourself and kind of in a low point in your life. And then you had this paradigm shift when you went fishing.
Right.
I love the fact, Brian, if I may say so, the very first thing you thought of was how could I share this with someone else?
Instantly.
Right? Wasn't even about yourself. You're like, I mean, I'm sure you thought I got to do this again.
No,
Let's go
of
fishing
course.
again, right? But the first thought you had was, man, how can I share this with another veteran who's feeling the
And I'm
same
like,
way I do, which so
like
many are.
first and foremost, I was like, I need to bring all my brothers out here, all of them.
Yeah. Because you made a really important point about how difficult the transition is for veterans coming back. Right?
Yes,
They spend all this time and money, billions of dollars, preparing us to go into war. And I think they're getting better. They are trying to work with mental health counseling and some of the
right.
things like that. They're realizing it's such a problem. But for years now, decades now, it's just been okay, you're released, you're
Yeah,
discharged, honorable discharge, have a nice life, right?
yeah. And I got to see it firsthand. I mean, I have an uncle who's who was suffering from PTSD, but back in those days, they didn't have a name for it. It wasn't a
That's right.
category. This is a crazy deranged veteran, and you're like, there's a reason why he's like that. It's not he didn't do that to himself on purpose. Like, I think I'm just gonna be crazy today. No, he suffered.
I,
And like I said, I got to see my uncle go through it, and thank God now he's getting help, and my nonprofit was there to help him and give him some resources for that. But had I not started this nonprofit, I would have never made the resource connections that I made to where I can just share them with other veterans and military servicemen.
well, there's a lot of help out there, right? There's a lot of services available. They are getting better. There's organizations like your own that are providing extraordinary help and support. And a lot of it is just education. That's why I wanted you to be on our show today to get the word out about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, we're coming up on our next and last break, but take 60 seconds, if you will, and just kind of just describe, if you will, what does Mission Fish do exactly?
We provide fish therapy for veterans, active duty, first responders, Ghost Star families, and uh, family support members. We take them out for a day of fishing, interacting, sharing, and healing. No cost to them.
And you usually go out in the Channel Islands, right?
Right?
You can't see it if you're on the radio, if you're on YouTube. Hold them back up there for a minute, Brian. But he actually has the Channel Islands tattooed on his hands.
This is my sanctuary right here.
That's right.
My buddy Jeff Davis did this for me. Um, I know there's days when I'm not able to be on the water, and when those days get heavy, I just look it down at my hands and I remember how many trips we've taken, how many lives I saved, but how many fish I caught in certain parts of the island. Like I remember fighting a white sea bass there, or caught my yellowtail there, or I caught this, and things like that. So it kind of puts me back in that perspective.
One of my favorite speakers, man by the name of Spencer W. Kimball, he said one of the most important words that we can ever have is the word remember. And when we come back, we are up against our next break. I want to get in a little bit more before we run out of time here about the impact that Mission Fish is having, because it's amazing, right? I want to talk a little bit about the suicide crisis that's going on and what we all need to do to combat that, what you're doing, what others can do, what we all can do. And so don't go away. We're on Finding Certainty. This show is all about creating and developing greater certainty in our lives and the lives of those around us. And that is 100% what Mission Fish is doing. So we'll be right back.
All clear back in two.
Thanks, Jordan. So on the YouTube, I always say they get a little bit of behind the scenes. So you've got several tattoos. I see your channel fish on your hands.
I was
Now
there.
what's
It's my brother's name, James Jones.
all right, all right.
Yeah,
And
passed
you
away.
say your brother passed away?
Yeah, 2010, age of 35 years old.
Was there an accident or did he get sick? What happened?
He had asthma, and it just got to him.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Oh, not a problem. I appreciate it. It was devastating for me because that was my right hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you saw me, you saw him. If you saw him, you saw me. There was no separation from us. It was like two peas in a pod, I guess you would say. Like my mom used to say, you guys are like two
Yeah.
peas in a pod. Because, like, yeah, whatever we did, my mom's like, I got to buy two because it was me and him. Or if we did
Right.
something, you got to take your brother. So, of course, I'm taking my brother. Why am I not?
Yin and yang, man. That's the
Yeah,
it's the kind of brother every brother wishes they had. My
right.
two sons are like that. I've got three boys, two girls, but my two youngest are really tight like that.
Yes, good.
No, they go. My one son, the older of the two, is away at college now, and his younger brother's like, man, can I go with you? You know?
Yeah. Wait about me. Wait for me.
Yeah, he's not too far from you. He's actually at Cal State Bakersfield. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
just up the road. So,
Yeah,
Coming
not
back in
bad.
15 seconds.
all right, thanks, Jordan. Here we go.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866 472 5790. That's 866 472 5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. As I was saying before the break, this show exists to help us all to find more certainty in our lives, to develop it, create it, share it. Right? It's a collective effort, and I think one of the most important things we can remember is we're all trying to find that in our lives, and all going through our struggles and our challenges, is that we are not alone. One of the best reminders I ever heard was that if you look to the left and look to the right, look at the person in front of you, the person behind you, and you assume they are going through something very difficult at the time, you're going to be right 99% of the time. Because we all are, right? It's easy to look at somebody and think their life is perfect. You don't know that they're addicted to drugs. You don't know that they're going through a divorce. You don't know they've got a lot of money, maybe, but they have cancer, right? You have no idea what people are going through. And so it's an important reminder or insight, especially when we're talking about veterans and helping them to transition and recover, trying to understand what they're going through. We talked briefly about the suicide crisis. Veteran suicides in America is at epidemic proportions. I mean, you know the statistics, Brian. Do you mind sharing what those stats are about how many veterans are taking their lives?
22, man. Every day, 22 veterans commit suicide.
22 a day.
And I think, honestly, I think that number is higher. I think that was a number that was established, obviously, many years ago. I feel that that number is still,
It's
I would say it's
increasing,
close
right?
to it. Yeah, I would say it's close to it. But on the average, I would say 22 veterans.
Think about it. I say it was 25 a day. If it's gone up, that's 750 veterans every month in America who are taking their lives because they can't. I mean, why do people take their lives? They do it because they feel hopeless, right? They don't feel like there's uh, any way that they're going to get better, that they're going to feel better or find joy.
Right.
So before we run out of time, do you mind just sharing what has been the impact of Mission Fish? I know I'm familiar with a little bit of your story, but first, what does the FISH stand for? I know it's an acronym, but tell us a
Fish,
little bit about the impact.
fish and mission fish stands for fishing, interacting, sharing, and healing. Um, like the saying goes, you can give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, but I could teach you to fish and you can eat forever. Um, interacting, it's more of what kind of basically what we're doing here, talking, conversating, but we're on the boat and we're just using that exercise of fishing to cope with it. Um, sharing, sharing aspect of it is you sharing with me what helps you, and me sharing with you what helps me, and others giving their input as to what helps them. Because on our trips, you'll see, man, we have people that hunt, we have people that paint, we have people that do photography, we have people that do equestrian, and when we're on a boat, it's almost like a resource fair because there's 30 different perspectives on the boat on what helps. And the last one is healing. And like I tell everybody, we as veterans, we need to start healing from the inside out. You know what I mean? We can smile all day long, but yeah, I'm great. But at the end of the day, like you said earlier, we're all going through it. And if we can heal from the inside out, heal our hearts, by the end of the trip, 9 times out of 10, you're looking at a very positive aspect of what we do.
I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name's Mitch Harrison, and he has a program he teaches to companies all over America about how to help their employees refill their tank. Right? This is something I could teach you, and you could share with your veterans. We can maybe have them speak to the veteran group, get it put together a group Zoom or something. But he talks about how we have to rest, we have to release, we have to receive, which is the joy part, right? Rest and release are about letting go and not letting the negative drag us down. And then the receive part is making sure that positive is filling us up. And then the last two are recreate and relate. It's what do we do for fun? I mean, that's where you guys come in. You're teaching your veterans how to do all of those things, how to rest, release, receive, recreate, relate, make new friendships and so forth. It's just so awesome. I'm sure he would be honored to help teach these techniques to some of your team. You could talk about them. It's really interesting, and he's had some significant impact. He's actually going to be on my show coming up, talking about what he does, helping people fill their tank. Right.
Yeah.
So share maybe just one example, because I know out of all of the hundreds, you're over 3,500 participants now that have gone out fishing with you over the last how many years? How long have you been doing it?
9 years.
9 years. So every year you do 2, 3, 4 trips, and it's really comes down to how much funding you get. The more funding you have, the more trips you could do. And fundraising is hard, right? But do you mind just sharing an example of maybe one of your veterans that stands out in your mind, maybe as it's kind of a great, I mean, I know you have lots of them, but
yeah, I have many, and when I start to think about it, it's like they all just start, hey, But there was one time when we had a trip, and we get to the landing at 6 o'clock, and this particular veteran was, I like to say, very reserved, very. I'm not gonna say insecure, but kind of to himself.
okay,
Not really saying much.
struggling.
Yeah, in the corner. People walk by. He's respectful. Hey, how's it going? Good morning. But you can tell he's just not out with everybody. Like he doesn't know anybody there. He's very uncomfortable, but he's still there. And my mission when I get there and I see those type of veterans, that's my target. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going to give him or her everything I got,
Yeah.
because I want them by the end of the trip. I want them to be like with the shoulders up. I want them to be like, I needed that. So on the trip, as we load up on the boat, you could still tell he's reserved. Get on the boat. He has his coffee, his breakfast. Still not talking to a lot of people. I at that moment, like I said earlier, I make my way to fish next to him. I want to be next to him. I want to talk to him to see what's on his mind, where he's at, what he's thinking about, if there's anything I can do at that particular moment. Um, at the same time, I bait his hook. I drop his line down. I get it to the bottom, crank it 3 times. I get my bait my rod up, drop mine down. As we're talking, he's like, I say, hey man, how you doing? He goes, I'm all right. One word answers, standoffish but not rude.
Yeah.
And I get it. I understand it 100% because I'm the same way. If I go somewhere I don't know anybody, you'll get one word answers. They'll kind of look at me like I'm, one of those guys, but that's just me. Um, and I asked, did he fish before? Nah, it's first time. Like, well, all of a sudden he gets bit. And at that moment, you see the transition. You see him go from like to like wait a minute, something's happening to my rod. Like his rod was, I go, wind up, man, start winding. So he starts winding, and he pulled up two whitefish. And when he saw the whitefish come out the water, his impact was made. High five, talk. I mean, his whole wall just
His
boom.
whole demeanor changed, right?
And I mean, these are whitefish for us, and whitefish is a staple fish. It's nothing like a big bluefin or a big marlin. It's just a normal whitefish, but for him, it was everything. And what he did was he brought him on. They took him off. He took a picture with him. They put him in his bag, and then he goes, "Oh, I need to bait my hook again." And it was just like, "Who are? Where did this? Where was this
Who are
guy at?"
you and what did you do with that other guy? Right?
Yeah, was in here. But then as we're fishing, then him being a Marine, the crap talking starts. I'm gonna get one now, better bigger than yours. Like, oh, okay, let's battle. Now
He
the fun
started talking smack, huh?
right. Now the fish now we're fishing and now we're interacting. And then I say, so what is it you do to help you? And he goes, well, he does equestrian thing. And I was like, oh, badass. So now he's telling me, now he's sharing his resource with me about how we do our thing. And I was like, dude, this is it. And then now the healing comes in because at 11 we shut the boat down. We have a moment of silence, and we do a breathing treatment on the boat, and I give everybody an opportunity to say something. But I saw it in his face that he was healing. He was his shoulders were down. He held one of the flags. He you could tell that during the 11 we played taps. You could see him shed a tear. But to me, we fished in the morning. We interacted while we were fishing. He shared his resource. I shared mine. But at the same time, we both healed. And that's when I got that's when my healing kind of comes to full circle. Is just
Oh
that
yeah.
like I did it.
That's powerful.
Very
Real briefly, we're almost out of time here, Brian, but real briefly, talk about why you pause at 11. Tell that story because that's really
Yeah,
important, I
well,
think.
at 11/11, as you know, if you add them up, it's 22. But it's also Veterans Day. Um, so we shut the boat completely down, turn the motor off, everything, and I give them a quick story as to why they're there, why I'm here, why I'm not only am I there as the president of Mission Fish, but I also suffer like them. I give them an opportunity to get anything off their chest. You have something you want to say? Say it. You want to cry, yell, scream? Do it. There's nothing but support here. There's no one gonna point fingers, laugh, make jokes. More than likely, we're all gonna encompass that moment with you. We play taps, and then we get back to fishing. But it's mainly just to give them that opportunity to feel grounded with brothers and sisters with the same minded mindset.
Right. And the 11/11 for 22 is for how many veterans are taking their lives each day, and now we need to stop it.
Right.
You know, I'm a firm believer, and I think you'll agree that we don't need to have the answers for someone who's struggling. Don't need to give them advice. Don't need to give them, tell them how to fix themselves. We just need to be there for them, right?
For
When
sure.
somebody knows they're supported, you put your arm around them, you pat them on the back, say, "I'm here for your brother. I'm here for your sister. You're not alone." And you don't have to have the answers. That's why I think a lot of people don't know quite what to do about veteran suicide or veteran homelessness. And you just got to be there. You got
Do
to
something.
open your eyes and be aware and don't be afraid. No, don't be afraid to just say,
Well,
hey,
the main
you're
thing.
not
Just do
alone.
something. Yeah, do something. Just don't be stagnant. Just reach out, even if it's a phone call, text, email, just a nod of the head, a shake of the hand. Just let them know that, hey, I'm here.
I'm here, man. You're not alone. How
Not
do
alone.
people get a hold of you, Brian, or learn more about Mission Fish?
Missionfishusa.org on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. I think my
YouTube?
daughter's trying to help us. Yeah, YouTube. My daughter's trying to help us create a little TikTok because I think that's the new thing going around. So trying to get that going. But those are the main ones. Missionfishusa.org.
Well, the number one thing they need, guys, is funding. They need donations. They need interests. They need awareness. They need people sharing their message so they can do not just a few trips every year, but do them all the time. Brian would love to do this full time and be able to touch more veterans, make a difference. we'll do whatever we can to support. We're trying to help you with our fundraising at Certainty Management. We offer unlimited zero cost funding for nonprofits. And we'd be honored to help any nonprofit out there. We're honored to be working with you, Brian. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for being on Finding Certainty. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Go fishing. You will be glad you did. And if you don't know how, then just YouTube it. It's out there. Talk to you later, guys. Have a nice weekend.
All clear. Great show.
Thank you, Jordan.
Oh, hope you both have a great rest of your day and great weekend.
You too, bud. So we're still recording. Is there anything else that we missed that you want to add on to the end of the YouTube video, Brian? Anything you want to say to your team or your people?
So this here, I don't know. Are you a bourbon drinker?
I'm not. I don't drink myself, but
yeah. But this here is, it's a 1783 bourbon, from Evan Williams. For my service, my continued service to my community and my country, I was selected as one of 6 to be on these bottles for Evan Williams. They flew us to Kentucky. They did a photo and video shoot. And you can see
wow, that's cool.
There. So it's just one of those accomplishments for me that I felt was, like you said, somebody saw it, somebody sees it, and somebody understands it to where they recognize, like, hey, they're making a difference, and he's continuing to push. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying.
That's amazing, man. I remember you telling me about that story. So thanks I was wondering why you had the bottle of whiskey behind you, or bourbon.
Yes, bro. You see, it's close. I don't drink it much.
It's important to remember, I think, if you're wondering about how you can get involved, right? First, just be aware, right? Notice what's going on around you. Take the blinders off. Raise your head. Whether you see a homeless veteran on a park bench, you see a veteran who's recently returned, you can assume, because you're going to be right more often than not, that they are struggling to figure out their transition, right? It's virtually guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Just be aware. And then second, be willing to reach out. You don't have to be a hero. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be there and be present.
A lot of people think like, well, I didn't serve. I served, but I didn't go to war. And I try to tell them, you were here. You know what I mean? Whether you were there, if you were in during wartime or not, you still enlisted. You still had the opportunity. There's a reason why you didn't go. And mine, like I said, mine was because of my back surgery. I mean, I had 3 to try to stay in. I was trying to stay. I would have stayed in forever had I could. But that 3rd back surgery, they were like, I coded for about 34 seconds on the table, and they were like, we're done. There's nothing we can do for you. And I was just like, what do you mean? That's all I want to do now.
Right.
But then when I had the opportunity to become part of the casualty assistance team, once again, like you said, that perspective changed. Now I'm doing for the families. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still honoring my brother and sister, but now I'm honoring their loved ones.
What you were doing was so important. And whether you're a veteran or you're not a veteran, right? People think, well, I didn't serve overseas or in a
combat environment.
In a combat environment, or I didn't serve at all. I wasn't able to serve, or I didn't get to serve, or didn't choose to. It doesn't really matter, right? If you can be aware of the needs, be willing to just ask, hey man, how are you doing? And when they say I'm fine, say, really, tell me, be honest with me.
Yeah.
I would assume the transition, and help prompt them a little bit. Say, I know the transition home from active service to civilian life is a bitch, right? It's got to be. That's how I've heard. Tell me honestly, how are you dealing with that? And get them to open up. You got to kind of prod them a little bit. You don't have to give them advice, like I said. You don't have to fix their problem or answer all their questions. Just be a listening ear.
It's going to be a resource, man. if I could just give them a resource that I use, that I have, that's the first thing I do is like, hey, reach out to this. They do this. They do video gaming. They do equestrian. They do um, gardening. They do painting, photography. Find something that puts you back to where you were, because that's the big thing, is getting back to what makes you happy.
Yeah.
When you're in the military, you're feeling some type of way, but when you get out, that everything is just gone, and you're like, wait, I didn't get a chance to, and it's scrambled to where it's just difficult to do. But and my thing is, like, for me, the transition was a week long. It was 5 days. By the time I actually went to my temp and tech class to the time I got out and was no longer there, 5 days. And I'm like, I don't know how to be Brian in 5 days.
Yeah,
My kids
that's
got
crazy.
it's just like, you know how to adjust to it. But now I
Yeah.
think, obviously, like you said, they're doing better. Times have changed. Obviously, the war made a big difference, because there's so many of us that are struggling with that transition that they had no choice but to say, hey, we need to fix this now.
Right. Well, if we can all try to remember to be aware and observant, offer to listen, ask questions, right? You don't have to fix their problems, just be there for them. Find out, learn about the resources that are available out there so you can actually give someone a tip. If you have no idea what's available, there are so many great veterans organizations and services and support. So take a minute and educate yourself a little bit on them. Just Google it. You'll find a lot of great resources.
There's a lot of
And
links that partner up. That just, like a
exactly,
chain.
there's a lot of cross support and so forth.
Yeah,
And a lot of it's just education, right? We would have less veteran suicides and veterans that are homeless and struggling if they knew the resources that were available for them. They knew that they weren't alone, and they knew that it wasn't hopeless, right? They've got to know that there are options and that there's hope.
right.
And we can all help in that. Whether we served or not, we can all help in creating a little more hope in the lives of the veterans that we are so indebted to. And
Yeah.
thank you, Brian, for what you're doing to do exactly that.
That's good information.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate your time today. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Let's get
of course.
get some funding in for you guys. I'd love to see you be able to do trip every week.
Right. That'd be awesome, man.
It'd be amazing. If you didn't have to worry about funding, you could just focus on the veterans. Man, imagine how much good we could do.
I can focus on, and that's my thing. Like, I could focus on so much as being an advocate for what we do,
Yeah.
instead of trying to be the advocate and the fundraiser and the admin person and the marketing guy. And
Yeah.
it becomes to where it becomes more work than a pleasure, I guess. To where it's like, is it really worth it? Am I burning myself out? And at times it happens to
Yeah.
the point where I just want to shut down, and like, I need to do something, but this 4 or 5 things is not it.
It's exhausting. Right? I say all the time that, we talked about starting our own nonprofit, but we realized that we could use what we're good at to help hundreds of nonprofits like yourself. We could help nonprofits to do what they're already doing and doing really well, right?
Right.
The number one thing nonprofits need is funding. So if we can help with that side, you
Right.
keep taking care of the veterans and then do the last thing, which is most important, which is just stay in touch and be consistent and follow up.
We
Right?
feel
Don't
that
just don't just have that one conversation with that veteran where you learn a little bit about them. Check back with them, right?
Yeah,
Put them on your,
that would be
send them a
key.
text, call them once in a while, and we be and
Oh,
stay
yeah.
in touch.
Like, we have guys that register for our trips, like, religiously, and it's the same, like, 3 or 4 guys, and it's those guys all like, we're doing this one, yeah, and you'll see them come in one, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and then you'll see the next trip come up, and you'll see one, and then the next one, and it's like, I created that by doing these trips to where now these guys are just, they're the best of friends together, and they
Yeah,
serve different
I
times and
bet.
different branches, but it was the thought of being on my trip that got them to where they're at. And these guys hold each other accountable. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, how's everybody doing today? Check in this, and it's like, wow, you guys are actually taking it to the next level, and that's a good thing, because at least I see it. I'm able to see it because I'm in the chat group with them. So I'm able to see it. So I'm just like, you guys are doing great. Keep going, fellas. Keep going.
That's cool. I think one of the most impressive things is that you have not had a single participant take his life, right?
Correct. Correct.
That's quite an accomplishment, Brian. You're just scratching the surface of what you could do, but even that, with hundreds and hundreds of participants, not one has felt that it was hopeless.
Right.
And so, congratulations, my friend.
Funny is when they do, they tend to reach out, and that's the best part about it. Is they'll, hey man, I'm feeling some type of way. You got any trips coming up? No, but I can get you on a boat. If we need to get on a boat, I'll get you on a trip. You know what I mean? Don't think I can't. I'll make phone calls and talk to the captains, owners, landings. Like, hey, I just need to get this guy out in the water now. Can you get me a spot or two? And usually they're usually giving like, hey, I'll give you 2 spots if you pay for 2. Like, that's fine. I'll pay for 2 spots. You give me the other 2 so I can get these 2 people out in the water.
That's great. Well, that's the great thing about fishing. Like you said, teach a man to fish. He eats for a day. Teach him how to fish, and he eats for life. And they don't have to just go out on your trips. I mean, once they start, it's not that expensive to pick up a used fishing rod. And I know you give away tackle to veterans, so they can keep fishing. They can go fish off the dock for free. They can go fish in a river or a lake. I mean, it is a hobby and a passion that they can do the rest of their lives.
Correct.
And yeah, I love that. I love it. So
Yeah.
all right, man. Well, thanks for being on. I'll get you the link as soon as we get this uploaded and send you the link to the radio show. Feel free to share it anywhere you'd like. It's great. It's a great story, and I'm glad we could help you tell it.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate you.
My pleasure, man. Have a good weekend.